So, Jay, I will now turn this over to you.
All right. First of all, let me just apologize for the delay, everyone. Part of our talk today is going to be how do you revamp and how do you thrive in 2020? And one of the things we're going to talk about is how do you revamp, and I'm going to revamp technology. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. But I appreciate you being on here, and I'm excited for the fact that some of the things we're going to talk about, I think, are very timely, considering that we started off fantastically looking for a wonderful start of a new decade, right? The roaring 20s. And here we are 9 months into it. And there's been nothing roaring about it, right? There's just nothing roaring. It's more like a silent whisper. But I'm going to hopefully help you understand that we're still early in the game. And that's one of the things I want to share with you, that we're still early in the game. And there's some things that I believe stand today as a solid message, as they did when I started to do this talk 12 months ago, in preparation for the new decade, or the roaring 20s. So I'm going to turn over my computer screen here, and we're going to share my screen. And I'm going to get into this presentation. I have a solid feeling you're going to absolutely love it. As we go forward, let me just make this bigger here. Okay. So a little bit about myself. I know that Michelle had a chance to share with you my story, but just to give you a little bit of details and put it into content as to how I've arrived at being able to share with you thoughts that I think are going to empower you as you consider what the next 10 years are going to look like. By the way, I've done this talk now about 35 times over the last 12 months. You can actually catch it on a TED Talk. It's on YouTube. So today we're going to cover more or less a trailer version of it, but I believe it's going to pack a punch, and I'm going to try to squeeze Michelle 10 pounds of groceries in a 2-pound bag. Okay, so I hope that you're ready for this. But I started my entrepreneurial journey when I was 13 years old. I actually grew up in a barrio, grew up in Spanish Harlem. And it's interesting, as a product of Spanish Harlem, as a product of a barrio, me and my twin brother, we were twins, we were adopted. And then we were adopted 3 days of arriving here. And my parents decided that after not being able to have children, my mother had lost, two children during childbirth. So she wasn't able to bear any more children. So it was either not have any children or adopt. So she decided to adopt. But the interesting thing is, when they went for adoption, they only applied for one child. And lo and behold, when they went down to the agency during those days, they just gave you a phone call and you showed up and there was your bundle of joy. You filled out a few pieces of papers and that was it. Well, to their surprise, they walked home with a package deal. It was a BOGO. They got a BOGO. So here we are, two twins, and I think it was more than my parents financially bargained for. So my father had to pick up a third job. He had worked 2 jobs already. My mom was a factory worker. She worked in the factories in the 60s. They had just arrived here from Puerto Rico, a very young couple. Not a lot of academic skills, but they had a hard work in their genes. So my father took on a third job. My mom stayed at home to take care of the twins. So we didn't have a lot. We just didn't have a lot. So I came from meager means, and I think that's probably what allowed me to develop this drive to be somebody, to do something special, and to go beyond the average and ordinary. And I'm thankful, as I look back now, that those moments where I couldn't have the latest Jordache jeans, I couldn't have the sneakers, I just couldn't have it. I didn't have it in me to ask my parents to pay for the $35 Nike sneakers just because all the other kids had it. I didn't have it in me. So I decided at that point, me and my brother decided at 13 years old that if we were going to have the Nike sneakers and the Jordache jeans, Michelle, you remember the Jordache jeans, right? Remember those Jordache jeans?
Jordache and Sergio Valente.
Oh my God, that's right, Sergio Valente. That's why I'm looking this way, because you're on my screen on my right-hand side. I forgot about Sergio Valente. You're right about that. So, but we needed to go out and make it happen. And so we used to go to Central Park. We lived a few blocks away from Central Park, and every Saturday and Sundays, you could always find the guys playing softball and baseball at the park, and they would leave behind gold. Now, most people didn't see it as gold. We saw it as gold because they would leave behind littered on the floor, cans and bottles. And for us, that was a nickel. And so my first entrepreneurial experience was exactly that. And I realized something interesting, and it kind of plays a role into my talk here. I realized that while most people see poop, others will see profit. I saw profit, and I couldn't believe it that all these people were walking around Central Park and they were leaving nickels on the ground. So we would go every Saturday and Sunday with my good old Puerto Rican mom's big shopping cart and the wired cart, the wires. And we would go in there and load up with bottles and nickels, bottles and cans, and collect nickels. And that's how we were able to buy the Jordache jeans and the Sergio Valentes and the Adidas and the Pumas and all these nice things that as kids, we wanted to be cool, so we wanted to have. But that instilled in me a desire to have an entrepreneurial experience. And from there, I went on to actually I started doing taxes for people. I self-taught how to do simple returns for people when I was 16 and 17. In fact, it's funny, my mom mailed me a few weeks ago. She found my old certificate that said that I had qualified to be a tax preparer. In those days, you could take an in-home mail-in test and they qualified you to be a tax preparer. So I was doing simple returns for people in the neighborhood. And that went on I became a personal trainer, developed a personal training business. I went on to Hollywood and off-Broadway and acting, and then my own entertainment company. And then I got involved in financial services. I really believed in financial literacy. And I believe that if my parents had been taught how money worked, that we would have had a different upbringing. And so I really believe that financial literacy can damage lives. And if you can teach people how money works, you could really help them make different decisions that affects generations. So I got involved in financial services work and sort of putting a spin on the education part of it. And then in 2008, I wrote my first book. At the time I was doing ministry. So I decided to write a book called the Entrepreneur's Devotional. It was a devotional for entrepreneurs. And I followed up that book with A Common Man's Devotional. And then I wrote another number of books thereafter dealing with sales and psychology, the stuff I learned at school, obviously at Pace, but also what I learned in the trenches dealing with people. And then I've gone on since then to launch a radio show, very popular, done a bunch of great things. And now I just get a chance to share my story and inspire other people. But I think what makes my message authentic is I've lived this stuff. What I'm going to share with you today, I've lived it and I'm living it. So there's a value that cannot be mistaken when you've lived what you're talking about. When you can honestly say that the things that I share with you is because I'm living them, I've experienced them, and I've helped other people with the same, in the same scenarios. So I hope that you take to heart what I'm going to share with you today, because I believe it'll help you pivot in the way that you're thinking, that'll help you reposition, and however you're positioned now to continue to thrive over the next decade. And by the way, let me say this. You might think, well, my best years are behind me. No, that's not true. Your best years are ahead of you. Your best years are always ahead of you, because you can't do anything about the past. All you can do is make the changes necessary, pivot and reposition so that the future can be a whole lot better, and certainly better than it was prior, if that's something you desire. I'll share with you this. If there's a reminder that you need, another reminder that you need, let me give you one, about how fast time flies. I'm sure you all would agree that time flies, right? Time flies. Just, was it last Friday or the Friday before, we were celebrating the 19th anniversary of 9/11. Remember that? 19th anniversary of 9/11. And let me share something with you, my friends. I was down there in the city when the planes hit the World Trade Center. My former mother-in-law had a business at the basement. It was Olga's Salon in the basement of Building 1. I was in the city when those planes hit the buildings. And it's something I don't like to think about anymore because it just becomes very depressing. But I share that with you because 19 years like that. Would you agree? 19 years have come and gone. And I bet to say that many of you remember like if it were yesterday, where you were on 9/11. And here we are 2 weeks ago. We were remembering it 19 years later. Next year, it'll be 22 decades have gone past since that horrific day in the city. So what I can tell you is the next 10 years, they're going to come and go just as fast. So it's easy to think, well, it's 10 years. Why are we talking about thriving in the roaring 20s this next decade? Because it'll come and go in the blink of an eye. And unless you make some significant changes in the way that you are operating right now on what I call the 4 Rs, the chances are those 10 years will come and go and you'll find yourself in a predicament where nothing really has changed in the things that you desire to have change in your life. So as I launch this, I want you to understand that there is a way that you can thrive in the next decade, in these roaring 20s, as it was termed last year, the roaring 20s, the reintroduction, the resurgence of the roaring 20s. Well, the next 10 years, they'll thrive, they'll roar, depending on how seriously you take the next 4 Rs, which I'm going to ask you to consider the 4 Rs to thrive. And we're going to break each of these down and spend some time on them during the time that we're here together tonight. The 4 Rs are recognition, realization, revamping, and then renewing. So recognition, realization, revamping, and then renewing. So let's tackle recognition first. When I say recognition, here's what I mean. There are certain things you've got to recognize in your life before you move any further. It's okay to hit the pause button every now and then and reassess. Because otherwise, not only do you run out of gas, but you could be making crucial mistakes over and over and over again, wondering, why is my life not changing? Why isn't my career, my business, my dreams, the things I want, why aren't things changing? And it's simply because you didn't take the time to reassess. You didn't hit the pause button. You just kept going. And folks, I'm just as guilty as that too. Oftentimes when I speak to folks about growth and development, whether it's on the sales aspect or a psychological aspect, oftentimes, I'll be honest with you, I'm really speaking to myself. And I just let people listen in. But you have to hit the pause button if you're going to thrive in the roaring 20s and come to a point of recognition. What are you recognizing? Number one, you're recognizing what is working. What's working? So as you assess your life, career, work, business, family, your health, that's an important one. What's working? What does it need to be fixed because it's not broken? I can always improve on it, but if I don't, it's served my purpose so far. Whatever you've done so far that has served your purpose, you have to recognize that's working. I'm not touching that. I'll find a way to improve it, but I'm not going to fix what's not broken. Too many people misconstrue, misassess what's working as something not working, and then they screw the whole thing up. So what's working? Leave that alone. But let's talk about the next 4 in the recognition part. It takes you to have a sobering moment to realize what is not working. Now, here's how you answer this question. Let me give you a little tip on this. You take pride, and you throw it aside, or you put it over here far away from you when you look at this question and you begin to answer it. Because pride is one of these areas that will not allow us to be honest with ourselves. Because there's a challenge sometimes to admit when something isn't working and we are directly at fault for it not working. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute when we're talking about realization. But in your life right now, recognizing if I'm going to thrive in this next decade, what's not working? What's not working for me? I've tried it. I've got no results. I've tried it, and I'm no better off than before I tried. If you try something, if you do something over and over and over and over again, and listen, I'm a big proponent of persistency. But that gummit, if you try something over and over and over and over again and it's not working, there's no result, it means it's not going to work. Let it go. When the horse is dead, dismount. What's not working? The third is, what needs to change? What needs to change? So you can identify, you can recognize what's not working and still be okay with it. There are a lot of people who do that. There are a lot of people who realize, my career is not working, and they stay there. I'm not happy with what I'm doing. I'm not happy in my relationships. It's not working. But they live with it. So the question becomes, what needs to change? You recognize what's not working. Well, what needs to change? See, when you recognize what needs to change, that's the pivot point. It's the pivot point that'll hopefully force you to answer the next question, which is, what's going to happen? What's the outcome if nothing changes? If I don't get out of where I'm at right now, if I don't make the changes, what's the outcome? Because the outcome, what it does, it allows you to recognize that there's some trouble ahead, that there could be some potential downfall or a lengthy season of unhappiness. If the outcome doesn't scare you, then chances are nothing's going to happen. But when the outcome is something you don't want, when the end result is not pleasing, and whatever you're going to negotiate, you can no longer negotiate, so the outcome is non-negotiable, that's hopefully what drives you to number 5. To recognize, so now what am I going to do about it? I know what needs to change. I know what's going to happen if I don't change. If I don't get out of this relationship, I'm in trouble. I'm going to be unhappy. If I don't change the way I'm eating, I'm going to lose, I'm going to find myself in a very difficult situation with my health down the road. If I don't improve my academic skills, my career skills, my communication skills, I may not get a promotion. So the end question is, the last question to thrive is, what are you going to do about it? Realize this. Recognizing what's not working, recognizing what needs to change, and recognize what will happen if I don't do it, it's just not enough until you take action, until you make a decision that enough is enough, that I'm going to do whatever it takes so that I can thrive this next decade. Because anything else, it's lip service. It's lip service. So that's why thriving in the new decade requires you to say, wait a minute. Let me go through the 4 R's of recognition here. What's working, what's not, what needs to change, what happens if I don't change, and then what am I prepared to do about it, okay? Let's talk about the next step, realization. Sorry about that, folks. I want you to read that post that I put up there not too long ago. It says, your current experience is the result of your past decisions. I want you to take a minute to read that with me and let that sink in. Because if the roaring 20s are going to be a new season where you can thrive, well, it's not just recognizing what we spoke about earlier and a few minutes ago. It's also realizing one thing, one very important thing. And can I just share with you that in the thousands of people I've coached through my businesses, through my clients, number of different experiences and opportunities that I've been a part of, different businesses and so on. Here's where most people fail. And this is why most people never get ahead, never thrive. Things don't change. Because they're delusional. Let me say that again. We are beings that can become very delusional. That's why there's a scripture that says, above all things, right? The heart can be deceiving above all things. We can deceive ourselves. We don't want to face the truth oftentimes about where we've gone wrong. And if you're going to thrive, you've got to stop and realize that you are where you are right now, for better or for worse. And I'm sure there's a lot of better, but I'm sure there's a whole lot of worse too. You are where you are right now based on all the decisions that you've made up to this point in your life. Now, that might be a great thing. You may be thriving now. Well, that's fantastic. That's an example of what I'm saying. But if you are not where you would like to be, or there's some changes, or you want to just take it to the next level, understand that taking it to the next level will be dependent on the decisions that you make and nobody else. So when I have conversations with folks, I tend to tell them, I'm like the doctor who prescribes the bad medicine. I'm the guy who comes in with the shot, right? We know we need it, we don't want it, but we know we need it. Can I encourage you to do something for me, please? If you do, can I encourage you, if you're going to thrive in the next decade, then there has to be a ceasing of the blame game. I hear people all the time, they blame the weather. They blame politics. They blame their neighborhood. They blame their family. They blame their job. They blame everybody, except they don't look at the person who should first get the blame, and that's themselves. I'll share with you something interesting. When I first started to work with a mentor, this was early on in my entrepreneurial experience. He was a very successful guy. He was doing very, very well. And I was young. I was 23 years old, very rambunctious. And I just gotten out of, I was doing social services work, and I was really excited about financial services, which is the business that I got involved in first, I think my first real professional business. And it was interesting because when he asked me, he said, young man, tell me exactly why are you not where you want to be? And so I can help you. I said, I'm glad you asked, because I had a list. I pulled out my list. I said, well, you don't seem to understand. I grew up in the barrio. I was adopted. My mother, my father, the neighborhood, this, that. And I got done apologizing to my friends. I got done with my list, and I was very proud of my list. I was very proud of my list. Here's what he said to me. He said, young man, that's a very impressive list. You've identified some really serious issues, but there's only one problem with your list. I said, what's that? He says, you ain't on it. He said, you're not on it. Changed my life. Brilliant. So your current experience is based on your past decisions. Your future experience will be based on the decisions that you make moving forward. And it's no one else's fault. It's sobering. It's hard to hear, but it's the truth. So if you're going to thrive, you have to recognize what's not working and all those other aspects, but then you have to realize it's me. It's me. If you're going to thrive, we have to focus on the next R, which is revamping. Now we're going to have some fun here. I couldn't talk about revamping as my first point and then come back and talk about realization and recognition, because it wouldn't make any sense. None of what I'm going to share with you in these last two R's, revamping and renewing, don't really matter if you don't first recognize and then realize. It just doesn't work that way. It has to go in order. Then you can go to a place where you realize, where you arrive at, okay, I realize what's not working, what's so on. I realize that it's up to me. So what do I need to change? What needs to revamp if I'm going to thrive in the roaring 20s? If these next 9.5 years are going to look for me the way I want them to look when I look back in 2030, then what do I have to revamp? Let me share with you a few things that have to be at the top of the list of your revamping schedule, your revamping agenda. Your habits. We are creatures of habits. Now, I would bet if we had more time, if I were to ask you, because I do this in large crowds as well, when there's time, I ask them, jot down the 5 bad habits that you have that you already know you have bad habits. What's a bad habit? I get up too late in the morning. I don't watch what I eat. I should be reading more. I should be spending time with good people. Habits, right? I should get more sleep. I should be kinder. What are the 5 habits that you already know that don't serve you, that they need to be revamped? We all can write that list all day long. So when I ask people to do the exercise, here's what I look for. I don't look for how many they can list. I look for how fast they can list them. Because people are quick within 10 seconds. They know them. It's like automatic pilot. They pull it out of the back of their minds and they realize, yeah, this is my bad habit. This is what's holding me back. This bad attitude, negativity. Why? Because we all know what needs to be revamped. We all know those habits that unless we revamp those habits, we're going to stay in the same place or we'll be handicapped. We're going to be shackled for progress. So what has to be revamped? Those negative, those stifling habits that you already know are the ones that oftentimes get in your own way. The next thing that has to be revamped is your thoughts. I could spend hours talking about the way that we think. And I'll share with you something. The only difference between me and you and others that I speak to oftentimes is the way that I think. I think about things that are going to empower me. I think about things that are going to bring me strength and energy and alignment. Some people sometimes have a hard time thinking about those things. Well, it's impossible to thrive if you're still holding on to the thoughts of yesterday. You can't look into the future if you're holding on to yesterday. It doesn't work. But that starts not in your physical actions. It starts in the way that you think. Revamp your thoughts and you could revamp your life. And boy, we could talk about that for another hour. But here's something that has to be revamped. Your relationships. There's some people that just don't need to be around. Think about this. How many of you could list people that you know that you're probably thinking about right now that you would say, I need to distance myself from that person because they are negative. They are energy zappers. They are people that just drain my dreams. They don't pour into me. They take from me. They don't input. They extract. They don't bring me to the next level. They try to take me to the basement. We all have people like that in our life. Those relationships are not healthy. You have to surround yourself with people that believe in you, trust you, want to help you. People that will go to the ends of the earth with you. People that will give you a word of encouragement, not discouragement. I believe that the 10th spiritual gift is the gift of goodbye. Sometimes you just have to have the gift of goodbye. Because there are relationships in your life that if you're going to thrive, if it's going to be a brand new decade, those relationships have to be held at bay. That's tough. That's tough. But if you're sincere about making things new and creating a brand new experience in this new decade, then a new experience with new relationships is something that has to be pursued. Because the relationships that you may have had up until this point, if they've not pulled you further along the way, if they've not been those that have promoted your progress, then they probably aren't going to do that the next 10 years. I know that's somebody needed to hear that. Marketing. You have to revamp your marketing. If you're in business and things just haven't happened and you've given it all you've got in terms of your marketing, your media, your sales skills, whatever it is that you've done in order to promote your business. And if it hasn't worked, well, you could do all the other things right, but logistically, tangibly, if your marketing isn't revamped, the results are going to be the same. I talk to business owners all the time. And I coin business owners and entrepreneurs, and you might be in this category on this webinar, I don't know, but it's still kind of the same anyway. If you're looking to become better at something, looking to market yourself as a better employee, as a more marketable person in the marketplace, then you have to revamp the way that the world sees you. Let me say that. You have to revamp the way that the world sees you so that you could become more marketable. And that might mean a brand new, fresh coat of branding paint. You have to revamp your marketing if the world still sees you the same, and that same vision isn't serving you and isn't serving your progress. That's what marketing is a new way for you to be seen. Well, that has to be revamped. I'm always thinking about how can I revamp myself? And by the way, let me just say this. In a very competitive world that we live in today, highly competitive, I can share with you that if you're not revamping yourself, you probably will get left behind. Okay. Let's talk about that in a term, also in a sense of a business plan. If you're in business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you have a business, or if you're thinking about getting in business. I know sometimes in these, we have alumni, we have current students. This sort of applies to you as well. You might need to revamp the way that you've been doing things. You might have to start from scratch in order to get to the next level, in order to thrive. By the way, one of the things that this unfortunate situation that we're in with this pandemic, it's forced people to pivot. It's forced people to reposition the way they're thinking, to scratch the old way of doing things and think of a new way to do things. That's probably one of the positive things that's come out of this pandemic. It has forced business people and entrepreneurs, just about anybody really, to revamp the old way of doing things to accommodate a new way of thinking and a new way of doing things, not only for the current, but also, I believe, for the future. But if you are a student and you're thinking about your future and the courses you've taken are not at this point exciting you, well, if you're going to thrive in the next decade, you may have to reconsider your career path. I had that conversation with my daughter. My daughter was going to school. She was going to Manhattanville, and her major, she's now a senior, and halfway through her 2 years, she just realized, I don't like what I was doing. She was doing photography. And she says, I'm realizing that I don't know how much I'm going to be able to how much activity, what kind of career in photography. So I said to her, you might need to rethink your career plans. You might need to revamp your career plans. It's okay to change. It's okay to do something different. The worst thing you can do if you're going to really pursue thriving is to stay stuck in something that you feel that you can't get out of, or because it's comfortable, because it's certain, because you know the outcome, but yet it's not what you really are looking to do. It's not really what you're excited about doing. Well, changing your career path might be a way to revamp so you can thrive in a new decade. Because you could find yourself 10 years from now sticking along the career path that you're on or the academic path that you're on, and find out 10 years from now, like a lot of folks, it just didn't serve your desires. So it's best to know that now. And finally, let me just say this. Skill set. You cannot embrace a new future with the skill set that you had in the past. You cannot embrace a new future of thriving and the new experience that awaits you with some of the old crusty skills of the past. What do I mean by that? If you need to improve in communication, then you have to improve in communication. If you have to learn how to be a little bit more innovative and creative, and it requires you to get coaching in classes, and it requires you to take courses, if those skills are the skills that are needed in order for you to thrive in this new decade, then you've got to develop those skills. There's a disease out there that I think a lot of people, especially business owners, entrepreneurs, and I speak a lot about that because that's the world I'm in, but it really applies to anybody. But I call it the entrepreneurial delusion disorder. Entrepreneurial delusion disorder. And this is what that disorder says. These are the symptoms. I'm dying over here. I'm struggling. I'm not growing my business. My career is not where I want it to be. My relationship, I'm not happy. But I'm not willing to make the modifications that I need to make personally to have something new in my life. I want you to make a mental note of this. Either write it down or make a mental note. If you get nothing out of this, remember this: success, or you could put happiness, or you could put thrive. I like success. Success will always seek the prepared mind. Success will always seek the prepared mind. So you got a responsibility. If you're not experiencing success, and by the way, when I say success, it could be in anything. It could be in health, it could be in relationships, it could be in academics, it could be anything. If you're not experiencing success, there's because success is probably checking you out and saying, I don't want to come, I don't want to visit, you ain't ready for me. Success doesn't want to take residence in your building, in your home, in your house, because it doesn't think that you're ready to accommodate it. Success is available for everybody, but are you ready for it? And if it means that you've got to improve your skill sets, then that's what you're going to have to do to thrive in the new roaring 20s, because it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Finally, let me just say this. If you're going to thrive in the new decade, apart from everything else we've talked about, the last R is a renewing, a fresh, new approach, a renewing of three things. Your dreams. Let me just share something with you. I find it difficult and I find it hard when I meet very good people. And I don't mean people that are along in life. I mean kids now. They've lost the ability to dream. They don't dream anymore. And you know how I know that? Because I ask people often, what do you want your life to look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now? Let's back out the years. You're 50, 60, 70 years old. What does your life look like? What do you want that design to be? What's your dream? And if I get an answer at all, it's usually a delayed answer because they have to dig it up. They've got to look for it. They've got to find it somewhere in the recesses of their subconscious. No one's dreaming. If you're going to thrive in the next decade, you've got to get the dream machine cranked up again. And you're not too young and you're not too old. I love my son. My son is only 10 years old. You know what his dream is, Michelle? My son is 10 years old. His dream is that he wants to be the next Star Wars stuntman because he's pretty good with his lightsaber. That's his dream. That's all he wants out of life. He just wants to be in the Star Wars movie as the next Anakin Skywalker whenever they cast a young version of him. That's his dream. So you know what I tell him? You could be that. What else do you want to do? There is no dream that's too big. But I think because of society, and I think because of the lack of encouragement, and I think the heightened exposure of negativity does play a toll in the person's ability to dream. If you're going to succeed, you have to dream. You have to renew your passion. What does that mean? That means you've got to go back and remember why you started doing what you're doing now. There's a reason that you started early on in life. There's a reason that you made a decision to pursue whatever you're pursuing now. And by the way, again, it's not just academically or career-wise. It could be anything. It could be a relationship. It could be marriage. It could be a parent. If you're going to thrive in that area, you've got to remember why you started in the first place. Because you know what happens to us as humans? Here's our level of excitement. Here's our level of passion, because we make a decision on pursuing something because we're passionate. We believe in it. We identify with it. We think that's what we're called to do. And yeah, we get all excited about that early on. But along the way, life starts to pile on experiences. And the more experiences that are piled on that may not be good ones, experiences that may not be your fault, sincerely may not be your fault, loss of friends, loss of family, layoffs, furloughs, businesses failed, relationships failed, kids are a mess, my health is not great. All these things pile up on top of the passion that you had early on. And we never take the time to revisit the reason why we started in the first place. You have to renew your passion. Remember why you did it and fuel that fire. And then you have to remember why. Remember your why. I know why I do what I do. Do you? Do you know why you do what you do? And what I'm talking about is the things that you want to thrive in this next decade. I'm not talking about the things that you could care less about. I'm talking about the things that you know, man, these next 10 years, this is what I want to see in my life. Okay, why? If you have existing whys, renew them, read them again. Remind yourself of the whys. Because by the way, the more you see your whys, the more it's going to fuel your passion. And that passion is going to allow you to dream. That's how it works. So it starts with remembering and renewing your why. Why am I going to go through the tough times? Why am I going to work hard? Why am I going to revamp? Why am I going to recognize? Why am I going to do these things that may be uncomfortable early on? Why? That answer is what's going to pull you through. If you don't have an answer, then it very well could be that those things that you think that you would want to achieve in and thrive in really are not that important. But the things that are, they demand a why. Without it, it won't work. Michelle, I think I'm at my time here. Folks, I want to encourage you to follow me. I've got my radio talk show. Anyone can catch it by listening live at the jaymamietalkshow.com. You don't have to be in Dallas where the show is based out of. You can catch it on the radio station, on my website, just by the listen live. I also have archives on there. I've got all of my handles where anyone can feel free to follow me on my YouTube channel, my Facebook page. I've got great things coming up that I think if you appreciate this content, it's just scratching the surface of the value that I believe I can deliver for you as you're pursuing the next best version of you. Michelle, appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Jay. And we'll send around a recording of this session and also all of Jay's links here so that you don't have to worry about taking notes right now. We'll send a thank you out to everybody for coming and also to folks who registered but might not have been able to join us. But thank you all again for hanging in. We apologize for the delay. Please go to our website too and visit Setters Gone Virtual on the PACE alumni website. We have all kinds of virtual programming coming up. We have faculty lectures, we have a finance series, we have fitness classes, everything's complimentary. We just want to keep you guys connected to each other and to PACE and highlight some of our great alumni, some of our great faculty. And we have some really interesting events coming up. So I hope you'll continue to join us. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night. Thanks.